Peter, are you done visiting with everybody?
Well, you know.
It's not a criticism, it's an observation.
Yeah, well, it's a nice
We
crowd.
love your neighborliness.
Yeah. Want me to do some karaoke or something?
Oh, no.
You've done a great job of helping us build community. So, thanks for
My
that.
wife would disagree on that, but
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It is April 16th, the day after tax day. And it's the meeting of the Transportation Advisory Board of the Met Council. It's 12:41 p.m. And we're going to call the meeting to order now and ask for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Moves.
Second. Oh.
Cattell seconds. The approval of the agenda for the Transportation Advisory Board meeting this April 16, 2025. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the agenda as published, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Agenda is adopted. Anyone in the public that wishes to address the tab on a matter of concern to them that's not otherwise on the agenda or scheduled for a future hearing? Okay, seeing no one coming forward, we'll move on to the reports. We had an exec committee meeting preceding this meeting today, and I'll just report briefly out on that. A lot of discussion around the agenda for today. I won't repeat any of that. Conversation around active transportation and some of the issues that we're going to be facing there in that little working group coming up on us, and including a conversation about, and we've got our active transportation chair and vice chair here, how to use federal money versus active transportation funds, that issue to be discussed on April 28th. And we'll be led in good conversation on that by our chair and our vice chair. And then the working group for the next regional solicitation will be meeting sometime in May. We've got quite a bit of activity going on. Steve will talk a little bit about that today. We've got about 100 people from a technical side working throughout the region on some of the initial ideas that have been advanced by the TAB on how the next regional solicitation should look. And then we had a conversation too about future agenda items. So if any of you have any thoughts on what you'd like to see for future agenda items, please let Elaine know. Send her an email to catch her after the meeting. Member Vaughn wants to talk a little bit more earnestly about our safety and our commitment to Vision Zero, and I think it's a good notion. And maybe do some presentation work around that issue from both a non-motorized and a motorized standpoint. And then we've got some new affiliations with the TAB here. We've got a new St. Paul TAB member, Sora Jost. Sora, welcome.
Well, thank you.
Council member. And would you like to tell us a little bit about your background and your interest in transportation?
Sure. I've been the alternate the last year, but I didn't come to every meeting. But I'm excited to be the official member now. Our alternate will be interim council member Matt Pravratsky, who previously served on the TAB. And then for me, I'm the council member in St. Paul, but I also work as an engineer, which I've been doing for 13 years now, mostly doing municipal infrastructure as a structural engineer. So I'm really excited to be here and be participating full time.
Well, we welcome your skill set from a political and a professional standpoint. Thank you.
Thanks.
And then Matt Pravatsky will be the alternate. And then we have one of our other alternates here who's going to be backing up Peter Dugan, District H alternate, Rachel Chinitz. Rachel, why don't you come on up and introduce yourself and tell everybody about your interest in serving on the TAB.
I'm Rachel Chinitz, and I'm from Eagan, and I have for years lobbied the city of Eagan to make things safer for bicyclists and pedestrians. Helped out a lot on the Eagan Forward thing that was about 10 years ago, and also served on the committee for the Master Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan, and I just retired about 2 months ago, and this is exactly how I want to spend my time making a difference.
All right.
And I'm a lifelong cyclist. I biked here from Eagan, so I have lots to say about that.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. We look forward to having you here.
Thank you.
nice to see you.
And then we all know that Todd Bewan retired from MPCA, and we appropriately feted him here a couple months ago, I think. Now, and Amanda Jarrett Smith is with us, and Amanda's been with us before as a presenter. And so we welcome you as the alternate to Frank Kolash, who is not here with us today. So we're pleased to have you here with us. And why don't you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your responsibilities.
Oh, sorry. Hi, everyone. Amanda Jarrett Smith, she, her. I'm the Air Assessment Section Manager at the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. I've for many years was participating in the technical teams here at that feed up to the tab, and so I'm excited to be here in this capacity. And I have a long history of collaboration between the PCA and Met Council and MnDOT on transportation issues and air pollution, greenhouse gas work, and so I'm excited to be here in this capacity. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for being here, Amanda. All right. And Katie, this gives a good chance for you to reintroduce yourself as well. You're here as an alternate for Member Chowdhury. And,
That is correct. Thank you, Chair Hovland. So I'm Councilmember Katie Cashman from Minneapolis City Council. I represent Ward 7 on the Minneapolis City Council, which covers downtown and large part of uptown as well. So many great new BRT projects opening up, both the E line and the B line this year, which is very exciting. And we're excited about the Gold Line extending into Minneapolis in 27 as well. And I chair the Climate and Infrastructure Committee and the Minneapolis City Council. So approving a lot of transportation projects, concept layouts, and so on, and serving as the alternate for Oreen Chowdhury today.
Good. Member Cashman, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else want to take the opportunity here to, I think everybody else has been around a while, so you can just proceed. We'll go to agency reports, and Member Sahibjan will report out for MnDOT.
Thank you, Chair. I got a couple of things I'd like to share. One, obviously, the most important thing, as you talked earlier, is give a little safety update and a reminder for us how important that is. I'll do both metro and statewide numbers and dive in a little bit. In the metro district, by metro region, we've had up to end of March 30 fatalities, and of those, six were non-motorized type pedestrian bicycle types, and of the 30, most obviously Hennepin County being the biggest had 10, and Anoka, Dakota, and Ramsey County each had 5, and Chisago, Scott County a couple. Carver County luckily had none, and hopefully it'll stay that way for them. And Washington County, unfortunately, had 1. So with and compare that to statewide. Statewide is up until yesterday, so it's a little bit more, not quite correlates with metro timeline, but we've had 76 fatalities. That's compared to 95 last year this time. Same day. So that's 20 less. And if being an engineer, extrapolating beyond the data, we last year we had 480 or so fatalities, and this year it would be under 400, so 380 some. While it's not something to be excited about, but it's a good goal to get back under for 400. Of the 76 statewide, 11 are pedestrian, 5 motorcycles, 2 bicycle, and 1 snowmobile. So that's kind of a little breakdown. Then I'd like to talk a little bit about our work with the federal highway, and maybe answer a couple questions about how it's going, and as you know, it's very fluid, the situation there. Our federal office that we work with have historically, I don't know exactly how many, but I think between 12 and 15 people there, and over half of them have received letters to giving them opportunities for early retirement, and that's these are brothers, sisters that we've known for a long time and work with, and they get a lot of, there are advocates, Minnesota's advocates here, and help us with the federal. We've had a great relationship. It can vary from state to state. Sometimes it can be difficult, but for us it's been great. So it'll be interesting what happens there. It'll be for sure about half of what it is now, and it'll definitely impact delivery and responsiveness, I think. Another point I wanted to make was the discussions about federal dollars and and there's a lot of discussions for states to have to abide by this federal rules, and specifically to, not to discuss certain things in documents, certain wordings, DEI and environmental justice and words like that. And it's pretty strict and pretty serious about it. So we as a agency, we had a little bit of conversation at the executive meeting, what we have values in this state. We have principles that we've had for a long time. Maybe we didn't call it equity. I used an example downstairs at the exec meeting where we have counties in the state of Minnesota that maybe have total of 5,000 population. And there's no way they can, with that small of a population and a big area, be able to afford to take care of their system from their own tax money, gas tax money. So the state aid operations, which has been established in Minnesota, a great system that we have, builds great relationship with the DOT, with the state and local government. 60-some years ago, they set it up where counties like that, and there's several, they receive more than what based on a number of people that live there. And I've worked in state aid for years, so we call them minimum counties. So this is, to me, it's equity, bringing up the smaller, the weaker, up to a level where it can take care of itself like others can. Otherwise, it wouldn't be. So, I mean, that's just one example that was in my mind that I thought I'd bring up, and there's probably a lot more. I think we've done real well in the state as far as that goes. Taking care of our own in many ways. Chair Hovland, you talked about a few examples as well. So we're in this place where we have projects that have EISs, environmental impact statements. Documents need to go to federal government, and we actually have to go through a process now, and I'll call it scrubbing the documents, basically changing the wordings to something else that would be acceptable. And who does that? Do we do it as a state agency? I mean, we all know my ultimate boss, the governor, has said that Minnesota will not compromise DEI, its DEI belief. So we work for him. So so that is important. But then in the meantime, we're working with a federal agency, and the money that we rely on is dependent on that. So we're trying to figure out ways to do that, maybe have dual documents or whatever it might be to get through. It's just a little bit more excitement, I'll call it white waters, as you're going down the river, sometimes you hit a little white water, you hang on to your soft drink, and eventually you'll come out of the white water, you'll be coasting again. So hopefully that'll all settle down. But funding-wise, we get formula funds in this state, and none of that is touched. It keeps coming. It's automatic. All the states receive those dollars. It's basically the money that we have sent back to federal government as our gas, 18.5 cents per gallon that we buy gas goes to federal government, and then they redistribute it back to the states. And for the most part, we get most of it back, not all of it. But so that's pretty automatic. It's only these other programs that had been set up through IIJA that's competitive, and such as the Navy program and maybe others. We do have a few grants in the metro area for Robert Street, the $20 million, and then Carver County has a $25 million grant that was received in January. It was right in between election, and then with the old administration, and then the new administration hadn't taken over yet. So that's on hold. Hopefully that'll get released. Quick, Mr. Chair, I don't want to take too much time. I do want to talk a little bit about construction going on. I'm sure you've seen in the news media, and if you drive through downtown Minneapolis to I-94, specifically, it's mainly the Dartmouth Bridge over the Mississippi River and other bridges. I think there are like 6 or 7 bridges that we're fixing. These are in need of repair, the joints, the deck, and so on. That needs to happen. So we have I-94 down to 2 lanes basically each way, and it's been tremendous delays, and it takes a little while to get used to it, for people to settle down and maybe not get on that road, completely avoid it. And that's usually what happens. 1/3 will stay there, 1/3 will take an official detour, 1/3 or go to a local system, and 1/3 just disappear. We don't know where they went, but that's people that maybe go all the way around or whatever it might be. And one thing I want to say, it could be a subject for the future, what we do as an agency for these projects that have major delay. We get accused sometimes of being selfish engineers and selfish organization that has the power, owns the road, and does whatever it wants and whenever it wants. And that's not the case. We go through analysis, traffic analysis, different kinds of very sophisticated models, traffic models that's ran before it happens. So you design it that way, and then during construction and during the delays, we also run more, and then if we need to do adjustments, we do that. And we've recently had to respond to the media, of course, locals, City of Minneapolis, and we're working with them, University of Minnesota and others to work with them and figure out what the impact is on the local system. A lot of those cars end up going on the local roads and cause problems, and we don't want that to happen. We're creating partnerships with the Googles of the world to help us with that, not to send people on the local system and to stay away. But a reminder, if you go west of the tunnel, Lowry Tunnel, the Dunwoody bridges, those will start. There's multiple bridges there, as you know, viaducts. Starts in July, and the bigger impact will be next year. But this morning I was driving down, coming east on 394, so the 3 general purpose lanes were pretty full. And then both the reversible easy pass lanes were full as well. And when we fix those bridges, we're gonna close one side. So you're gonna go from 5 lanes to 2 lanes, or 4 lanes to 2 lanes. And I don't know what else to say about that other than to basically over-communicate and just stay away, because we have the duties to take care of the infrastructure and get down there. And for those bridges are, I don't know, 35 years old, maybe more, 40 years old. So anyway, so I just wanted to talk about that a little bit and apologize for any inconvenience for those who drive.
You want to give out your email address again? 94. Yeah, I've had that experience. I'm on the 1/3, found a different way to go now.
Yeah.
Now, Member Martinson has a question or a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm glad you brought this up, Member Sahidran, because I was going to ask you about it anyway. As a researcher, I always appreciate data. And I'm glad to hear that there is apparently data being collected on what is happening during this, literally a naturally occurring experiment. Natural experiments should always be taken advantage of when they can be. So I'm glad to hear that MnDOT is collecting data on what's happening with the partial closures. And you reference 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3, but I would really very much like to see what actually is happening with respect to traffic evaporation, traffic rerouting onto local streets, and how that evolves over time during such a closure as this. This can be very informative. No, I don't want to ask it as a question. I want to pose it as a request. I would request that we here at TAB get a report out of that at the end of the period, after the closures are taken care of and everything's reopened again. I would like to see MnDOT come and report on that, which is being studied while this is happening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Member Martinson. Actually, part of what we would like to look at is, and I think there's ways to do it, because much of that traffic is local. Most of the local folks get on and get off the next exit to get to their destination, which they shouldn't do, should stay on the local system. But one thing we're really interested in, see how that impacts, because I think we have ways to look at how, for example, bicycling or other modes of transportation, what happens. There's ways to figure that out. Our folks tell me that, and I don't know how they do it, but I think we're actually talking with the U of M to maybe work with the CTS, and City of Minneapolis is interested in doing that and see how that mode shift can happen, maybe forcing people. I saw somebody in the article in the paper, one guy said, I used to drive, but I'm now riding. I'm riding my bike on a local street. I'm enjoying myself. So how many of those are there? That would be good information to have. And as we're looking at the Rethinking 94 project, that's the 7-8 miles between the two cities. We have shown that there was a lot, as you know, there was a lot of interest in converting it to a boulevard, and that at this time that hasn't gone forward for various reasons that I don't want to get into here. But one great impact of that was that it'll flood the local system, especially the St. Paul City streets. It'll turn red, and that creates cars versus ped and bike. Not a safe situation. So it's kind of a precursor of having a route that carries 40,000 vehicles a day. That going to a 4-lane divided, that's more like 35,000 cars. So what happens to the rest of them? And so as we were talking earlier, my own vision is to separate regional traffic from local traffic, then you'll be all right. But how you do that and how you can build a system like that, that's to come yet, so.
Good, thank you for
So I
that.
got a homework, Member Martinson.
Yeah, I think what requested homework assignment is right. Member Jared Smith, anything to report on for MPCA?
Sure. I have just some notes on our Volkswagen program, which I think the tab is familiar with. But we have 2 open requests for proposals, one to replace old diesel switcher locomotives with electric alternatives, and another to replace old diesel school buses with new, cleaner diesel school buses. And just kind of an update on that program. It's a 3-phase program. We're in phase 3. And so we have about 4 or 5 more years of time to work with this funding. And so far, we've issued 210 grants and processing over 720 individual projects out of those grants. So it's been a big effort, and I just continue to get the word out on those opportunities to get some cleaner vehicles and equipment into the system. So thanks.
All right, thank you, Member Jared Smith. Any questions for the member on MPCA-related matters? All right, let's, we don't have anybody here. I don't see Carl. I don't see Bridget Reef from MAC. Anyone in the back from MAC? All right. We'll proceed on. It's always an interesting report to get. I was particularly interested in passenger counts based on what's been going on lately, but we'll get those next time. Deb Barber, Metropolitan Council update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one thing tonight. We've got a couple of seats that, one that's vacant and one that the person is retiring. They're districts 12 and 15, both on the east side. So 12 covers Dakota, Ramsey, parts of Dakota, Ramsey, and Washington County, and 15 primarily in Dakota County. Just with a little update, the nominating committee was formed, and I believe they met earlier this week for their first time. And so we're hoping to have those seats filled probably sometime in May. Both of the council members who are moving off are part of Transportation Committee, so I'd expect at least one of the new members will likely be on Transportation. So just wanted to make sure it was in your mind. For those in District 12, Councilmember Vento is retiring, but is going to stay on until that seat is filled. So she is still advocating for you mightily, so right up till the end, I'm sure. So, but if you have any questions about the process, feel free to reach out.
Any questions for Member Barber? All right, very good. Let's move on to our colleague Gary Hansen and get a Suburban Transit Authority update. Oh yeah,
Sorry,
Commissioner, go
I'm
ahead.
about to get a cup of coffee. Did Member Barber highlight the Gold Line grand opening?
I did not, but I will let you do that.
It was very successful. If I just, some of the members here showed up and appreciate it. It was very successful. I think there were 300-400 people, and it was a really nice launch and a great team effort. I think it's a model for a lot of the bus rapid transit systems that are underway. And it was a great day. And we just got to build on that. Like I said, it's in my remarks, it's an opening, it's kind of a beginning, so we have to kind of work on that. You know, it's kind of like a marriage. You got your transit line, you have to work on it, make sure it's safe, clean, and you know, responsive to the community. So.
All right, thanks for that supplemental information. Member Barber.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. It was a great event, and I do actually want to also thank both Washington and Ramsey County, who had a lot of participation and also provided free rides for the whole first week of service, which I think was very, very generous and very helpful. So, thank you.
Good. All right. Now back to Member Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick update. Maple Grove Transit and Plymouth Metrolink expect that draft reports of their joint transit needs assessment study will be ready soon. They're anxious to receive those. Southwest Transit reported nearly a 10% increase in ridership over the prior year, with fixed route ridership especially strong. Their 494 fixed route service to the Mall of America and the airport launched at the end of March. Their park and fly service has been strong, and an attraction there is their $5 per day parking fee, which is drawing people's interest. The autonomous vehicle service around the Southwest Transit Station, which we heard about from Southwest Executive Director Eric Hansen a few months ago, was launched yesterday. So they finally worked through all of the regulatory requirements and got that off the ground, so that is now operating. Minnesota Valley Transit Authority Connect microtransit ridership is up 56% year to date. The Burnsville bus garage updates are underway, and they're already resulting in improved operating efficiency. MBTA's seasonal for fun service commenced on the 20th of March, and they're serving the Mall of America and the Egan Outlet Shops, Valley Fair when that opens, Canterbury Park and Mystic Lake. And they had several hundred riders that they took to the AC/DC concert last week. And, by the way, it was a great concert. So, that's my report.
Great, thank you. Questions for Member Hansen? Comments? Anybody regret they missed the concert? All right.
Video if you want to see it.
We'll put that on the informational item agenda. I think we'd all like to see that, you at the AC/DC concert. We've got Molly McCartney from MnDOT with us today, who is the TAC Vice Chair. I don't know if there is a TAC report over and above the other things that you're going to be covering today, but I thought I'd check in with you.
Thanks, Chair Hovland and members. I can wait for the TAC items.
All right, very good. We'll stand by. We'll be with you in a moment. We've got minutes from March 19, 2025.
So moved, Anderson.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we've got a motion second from Member Hansen on the approval of the March 19, 2025 minutes for the Transportation Advisory Board. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of those minutes for March 19, 2025, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Those minutes are adopted. And then we're going to bring Molly McCartney back up here again because we have some consent work to do and some non-consent, one non-consent item. And there are 3 items on the consent portion of the agenda, and all were passed unanimously by the TAC, but she's going to walk us through each one of them so everybody can understand them. If they have any questions, then we can vote on them as a package. Member McCartney.
Thank you, Chair Hovland and members. For the second month in a row, I'm back presenting to TAB. Joe McPherson's at a county conference this week, so he sends his regards. We have 3 items on the consent agenda, 2511, 2512, and 2513. These are all streamlined TIP amendments. The first one is a request from the City of Bloomington to add scope and budget to a project funded by the regional solicitation. The budget is coming from the city, or is all local, and is consistent with the approved award for that work. They're adding a multi-use trail and some intersection improvements. The second is a streamlined amendment from MnDOT, from our Office of Transit and Active Transportation, that administers an FTA grant program called Section 5310. It's also called the Enhanced Mobility for Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities Program. You'll see from your materials that there's a reduction to 4 entities, and really this is a managing of their federal money. There is a award to an organization, and then kind of the 3 set-asides to other counties. And we're not removing funds from anything, or MnDOT's not taking funds away from this. It's what was anticipated. But the original anticipation of spending in this fiscal year is different than what came about from awards or what they anticipate to spend this year. So the overall FTA funding for this program stays the same over the 4-year TIP period. We're just adjusting that. And then the last item is a streamlined amendment from the Metropolitan Council. It is a federal grant called the Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Program. It was awarded early in January for electric vehicle chargers, and it is not the grant does not have a signed agreement, but doing the work that can be done, the Met Council is adding it to the TIP through this amendment.
All right, questions for Vice Chair McCartney on 11, 12, or 13? All right, is there a motion to adopt those items in a single motion?
So moved. Jenkins.
Jenkins moves.
Second, Morris.
All right, thank you. We got a motion and a second on the adoption of item 2025, 11, 12, and 13 in a single motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Those items are approved, adopted and approved. And then we have one action item, 2025-10. I'll turn back to Vice Chair McCartney.
Thank you, Chair. Point of order on those last 3. They were all passed unanimously at TAC. This item, a non-consent item from Washington County, is a request for a program year extension. It's originally programmed in fiscal 26, asking to be moved to 27. This is because of project delivery milestones, needing a little more time in order to get to letting. This project has a lot of coordination with a railroad. And if you've had staff or worked with a railroad, you know, like that maybe not the easiest process. So in order to get the project delivered as it was funded and programmed, they need a little more time, and this was also approved at TAC unanimously.
Commissioner Karwoski?
I'll make a motion to approve the amendment 2025-10.
Second.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Any questions? We got a discussion now. We got a motion and a second on 2025-10 on approval of the recommended motion. All right. Any further conversation? Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of 2025-10 in its recommended form, say aye. Aye. Carried. 2025-10 is approved. And then we've got 4 informational items today, and we're going to start out with some work that was done by both staff internally and some external consultants on highway systems, harms, impacts, and mitigation priorities. And we're going to spend about 20 minutes discussing this particular topic. And Bethany Brandt Sargent is going to introduce the topic. So welcome.
Thank you, Chair and members. We're really excited today to bring you the introduction to the Highway System Harms, Impacts, and Mitigation Priorities Study. I am joined today by Abdullahi and Hyla, and they are part of our consultant staff helping to lead this work. So I'm going to turn it over to them, and then I'll be around to answer any questions.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Abdullahi Abdullah. I lead a small consulting firm called Humanize Minnesota that focuses on connecting communities and working with communities, especially underserved communities, and bringing their voices and interests into public processes and working with governments to make sure community, those resources are accessible and equitable. And I am supporting a role in this project as one of the consultants that are working behind the scenes to make sure we take the time that is needed to have conversations that are necessary to discuss such a significant topic, considering the impacts of the highway system in our region, both positive economic benefits and other benefits, as well as not so positive or harmful impacts to some communities. So today we are introducing that. This is study to you. Hyla will do most of that presentation, but rest assured this is not the first time that you will hear from us. So there will be more opportunities to engage in the conversation, to provide your input, and to take the time that we need to do this work justice. I'll pass it to my colleague Hyla to do the rest of the presentation. Hyla.
All right.
Thank you, Abdullahi, and thank you, Bethany, for introducing us. We are so honored to be here today. This is an important project with a weight we're taking very seriously, and we know this weighs on the hearts of a lot of people around the table. This is about the nature of the work that's done here, the upsides, the downsides, and how it all adds up, and most importantly, where do we take this information? This is why this project is a start of a simple messaging around this, because we've been working hard to craft language so that we're understanding this is a full regional effort. It's great to see all this representation because it's not about one little piece of the region, it's about the full picture and about the full picture of what's been done. These points here are sort of stepping through the main ideas here. We'll get into a little more detail after this point. First of all, we're starting with value our highways. The idea here is that the highway network, the roadway network out there has value. I can only guess how many decades, centuries of experience we have collectively around this table that's worked on this. We're not saying it's perfect. We're saying it's far from that, but it's acknowledging that we're starting with the stewardship and the starting point today of where this system is and the responsibility for moving forward with it. Admitting to challenges. The harms part is highlighted in the title. That's important. I'm sure this group has heard that terminology before. And there's been some vetting of that too, to say this is about understanding there have been major impacts and unforeseen and lasting harms to communities. The safety conversation earlier, even just trying to get under 400 people per year, that's a significant burden that's carried to say there's a lot of things to solve for here. And also, this is not equitably distributed. We also know some communities have been hurt very much. I'm sure people can picture that right away. Some less so, but indeed, collectively, there's been a lot to take account. Investigating the impacts. I think I heard about a researcher over there. We're going to talk lots of data, plenty of data, so much data that's what we need to come back to every so often reflect to say, are we focusing our attention on the right things? We don't want to drown ourselves in that information, but we want to have a full and comprehensive picture, quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative, what does stats tell us? Qualitative, talking to people, especially with brilliant folks like Abdullahi to lead us in having conversations to hear from the eyewitnesses and the people themselves who affirmed. Because, of course, many of those folks are still around with us. And, of course, identifying solutions. This is about finding a path forward. This is about saying, how do we do better? How does Met Council do better? How do all the agency partners do better? How do we collectively do better? The so what is so important to us. We're going to be talking about it the whole time. We could get stuck on the spinning of saying just talking about the problems, but let's figure out what we can do differently. I'll talk a little more about, in detail, sort of walking through what this project's going to look like in practice. And again, we're pretty high level at this point, lots of details, but I want to give you a sense, if you haven't already, of where we are in the entry point. We're going to be exploring the history of the regional highway impacts. We're already doing a deep dive and looking at what are all the different facts and figures, what has happened, what's been the sequence of decision-making and resource allocation. Connecting with the people who were and are impacted. Talk about that a little bit about who, what, where, and how that works. Looking for opportunities to do better, and advancing understanding and support for change. One thing I think Met Council should already feel super proud of is this is a precedent-setting study. Nobody else in the region, in the nation, as far as we can tell, has done something quite like this. There'll be eyes on this, and we have partners on this who are going to looking at this as an example, not just for here, but for elsewhere. That's just going to be in our minds in terms of the level of this and the type of conversation we have around this. The goals here, I won't go into these in detail for the sake of time, but we certainly have been thinking about what are the standards this process will hold itself to. This is going to be super important because, as you can all witness, there are so many partners in this. We need a common understanding of how the project works together and what it ends. The process needs to be accountable, transparent, clear, and build across the different understandings of different agencies and expertise, of course. And the outcomes, again, are going to be organized in terms of tools and strategies and ways to share this information individually and publicly to advance understanding and to support decision-making. The objectives here get into a little more detail of how this will operationally work, and I can tell you we have giant spreadsheets and charts that go through all these different steps. If you have specific ideas or thoughts about how any one partner in the region is involved, we can either start to answer them today, but we will have an answer. This is really meant for everybody, and we're trying to be super thoughtful about that. The highway, the research topic and the engagement topic are two parallel but intersecting paths, and we'll talk a little bit more what that looks like. But again, it's all meant to come together and to ensure that we have voices and very different perspectives we understand, because we know everyone's not going to be on the same page. To have a respectful process that aims towards consensus but also acknowledges significant differences. 3 organizing concepts we're sort of approaching this with, for those of you who are kind of like a thematic, a theoretical framework. One is that infrastructure is complex. Public good. We're all here for the public good, right? Every one of us. But which public? What good counts more than others? The more you talk about, the more it's clear that it's hard to have something that's a perfect win all the time. And we need to embrace that and understand that you can, just because saying something's bad, there's some problems, and we're trying to address it, doesn't get rid of the part that's good. And that for every harm, there's also been some benefits. That doesn't cancel out, but we gotta acknowledge that it's not just one way or another. A public health framework. This is an important criteria that came in the early process, and I think it's gonna be super useful, because above all, this is centering the people of the region and the people groups, saying, how is this impacting people's lives, physically, economically, socially, and as part of community? How are people better or worse off in all those different ways because of that? Using that as a lens and an organizing framework to talk about what these harms mean, both at an individual level, community level, and over time. The last one, trauma-informed approaches. And this is borrowing from some other professions more so. The folks who work in healthcare and in actually emergency response know this well. We're talking about real trauma. We're talking about things that happen to people in communities that are traumatic, that are stressful, that leave a mark. That means extra respectfulness, extra empathy in how we deal with this, and extra care that we're not just treating people like statistics. People lost their lives, people have lost their homes, people have seen their world changed. This honors that. This doesn't hold this accountable for solving for all that or bringing out solutions, but it wants to make sure that we are respectful in that way. I don't think anyone intends to be otherwise, but I think that we want to call it out as a value. I'm not going to get into the detail of the schedule because it's pretty granular here, but suffice to say, as mentioned earlier, there's parallel paths for both research and engagements extending late last year and then into 2026. Later this year, we'll probably be getting more to the harms identification. We may have something, talk to Bethany about the right time to come back before this group to sort of say, what are we finding out? There will be touch points along the way and sort of pause points intermittently to make sure that we're not getting ahead of ourselves and we're bringing people and different perspectives along. This is just a start here. When you see the categories in the right hand of the screen is looking at that there's already been starting a typology of when you say harms, what does this mean? These are the type of topics we'll see research, we'll have engagement around, we'll have findings, and possibly recommendations. Transportation and public safety, housing economy, which Ashid also talks about with wealth building, housing, jobs. That's a big category. Connectivity and access, placemaking, sense of place and community, accessibility for all, including ADA considerations, health, air, noise, and light, the physical health impacts, environment and climate, including climate change and other impacts like that, trust and accountability in government. That was one that sort of came out of the more recently, saying that is part of a value in this as well, and others. We're not going to add on infinitum, but we make sure there's space, that we're not closing the book on things that people may have brought up that we haven't thought of before. Each of these is going to be vetted, categorized, with data associated with it, with conversations around it, and with specific findings that come out of it. The engagement approach is likewise multi-tiered. Again, Abdullahi introduced so well for us. We are structuring this to have different levels of consultation. The project management team, a core group of around staff. We're here at 1B already with committees, presentations, and conversations. We have several different advisory groups, which I'll talk about briefly in a minute, and also different levels of engagement. Let me pull it apart just for a bit. The TAC will look maybe somewhat like this group. We are pulling in city, county, and state representatives from around the region with an emphasis on trying to balance out geography, viewpoints, and perspectives so that we can have a round and robust conversation. This isn't all people who are coming from the same mindset. We went insight on different eras and contexts and geographies and had advised on applicability for different groups, like how does this apply to the community you represent or the county you represent. The policy group is more the nonprofits and community-based organization representatives. These are folks who are working often actively with groups in the community, a well-rounded group that works with different perspectives, different parts of the region, different groups, and provides a similar insight but more policy-focused. The committees, I think, need no introduction. You're sitting in one of them right now. We also are super excited to have something called the Research and Equity Panel, which is a group of thought leaders from across the nation. We have some fantastic people from here, including the U of M, but we also have people from other parts of the country who have been working on and thinking about issues around transportation equity, public health and environment, and other topics related to this. This study is precedent setting, but we're not the first ones to think of it for sure. And we're going to get some of the best brains out there to sort of reflect on us and tell us how does this fit into the bigger picture. So sort of next steps. This is kind of where we are right now and sort of as a touch point in this process. And I want to make sure we have time to have questions if there are any. The engagement and research plans are sort of multi-stack documents, which you already heard roughly what we're doing there. We can talk more, answer more questions about our methodology or approach for either of them. Committee presentations, kicking off these meetings, and already getting into the roll up your sleeves and get into the data and research, which is happening already. So there's some questions that were in here. I think they were just for a sake of if everyone's too shy to come up with their own, but we certainly are interested in any thoughts about the harm categories or organizational contacts because we know you are very well-connected people, but really happy to answer any questions at this time. Here's our contacts.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Hala. Questions on this work? Yes, go ahead.
You know, your question right here, are there any harm categories that we missed? You know, it's hard to really know for sure because it is high level, but I want to say that there's personal harm too to the individual person if they've had an incident on there. But again, we talked about this and I brought it up in our executive meeting. There's a difference between how women perceive things and men do on transit. And that has to be taken into consideration. And also, they actually sometimes are left to have to ride transit because of issues of affordability of other transportation modes.
That's excellent perspective, and you're right. There's a lot of depth already buried under these. The public health ones will take into account the personal impacts, both physical and mental health. And I think certainly disparities between different groups of gender, race, national origin, other forms of identification will be we've called as well, because we know there are disparate impacts, and that can't be ignored.
Member Martinson.
Thank you, Chair. So first of all, I look very much forward to seeing this work. I'm very happy to see it going forward because it is extremely important. And so thank you, and thank you to the people that have helped to make it happen and get it funded. You've also got a very nice panel put together here of a lot of very appropriate people. It's a little light on women, I would note, and there are some women who could probably be usefully added to it, who are in fact national experts. And to that point, I hope that you will also make use of some existing materials here locally. So in 2021 and 22, the Hennepin History Museum had an exhibit that was outstanding and very well done called Human Toll, A Public History of 35W. That was actually largely created by a woman that was at the Humphrey Institute at the time. I think she's moved on now and I don't know where she is, but I'm sure that you could look in and find that. And then here in St. Paul, the Hallie Q. Brown Center has kind of a standing exhibit of the harms that have resulted from the push through of I-94 through the Rondo neighborhood. And there are both materials there and people who can walk you through those materials that speak to the harms that have occurred from I-94 in the Rondo neighborhood as well. So I wish you the best of luck with it, and I really look forward to getting reports back on this when you're done with it. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Member Martinson. Member Cashman.
Thank you, Chair Hovland. Thank you for doing this work. It's super important, I think, for someone who lives on the highway 94. I live in Loring Heights. My neighborhood was separated from Loring Park with the construction of 94, and I've just lived it for the last 5 years. And I think a lot of us who live along the highway are very aware of the impacts. And it's like, it's so obvious, but actually putting quantitative and qualitative measure to it, I think, is important for decision making. So I would just encourage neighborhood organizations to be involved, like the Stevens Square, Loring Heights neighborhood organization that I'm very involved with. We have noise impacts, we have cancer risk. You know, the MPCA has cancer risk maps, and 94 and the adjacent communities are just dark red. And, you know, I have friends in Loring Park, people in their 30s who are battling cancer right now. And it's not a surprise at all to have that be happening to my friends who live along the highway. So I would just uplift the public health impacts, the cancer risk for the people who do live along highways. I just lastly wanted to bring up that our streets commissioned a study last year about the kind of the opportunity cost of a highway, and if you know there was less highway but there was taxable property there like housing and retail, like what would be the economic impact of having productive use of land versus a parcel of land it's very expensive to maintain a highway. And so they did a great study on just the tax benefit to highway removal. And I think that's a really interesting economic point to be made in the value category. So thank you.
Yes, Member Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for you and your team and everybody who is bringing this important work to the forefront. A close friend of mine lives a block from 35W in South Minneapolis. And when she moved in with her 2 young kids, had to buy an air purifier and keep all the windows closed, just to try to keep the highway away from the health of her family. So this work and the impacts really do hit home. I think the 2 things that I would love to see as part of this, which you may already be thinking about, is thinking about harm not just as past harm that happened in the past tense, but ongoing as well as potential future. Sounds like that may be on your radar already. And then I would also just make sure that I think it's really important that like the work that's happened around Rondo is uplifted, but also to Councilmember Cashman's point, like all the neighborhoods along there, University of Minnesota, Seward, Cedar Riverside, Midway neighborhoods in St. Paul, and really make sure that the voices of community members, past and present there, are really brought into this project. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Member Jenkins.
So we've had a lot of call out for metropolitan area community engagement. I want to make sure we include the rural parts of the metropolitan area as well. You may think, well, it just goes by farms, but what does the traffic impacts at the exits on the road do as well? We may confirm that it's not that much, but we should engage those communities to make sure we include them.
Thanks.
I think for all the members of the tab, if you think about this now based on the presentation and you think of other potential harms that you'd like to see addressed as they're requesting in their presentation, that you go ahead and email Elaine, or Hyla's email information is on the last slide you all have in your possession, and Mr. Abdullah's information is there as well. So I would encourage all of you, as you think about this potential study at its onset here and the past or present or future harms that may be involved, that you feel free to send them that information so they can make sure that this is as thorough as possible.
Please do. We love all this input, and this is super helpful. It aligns definitely with what our group's been talking and thinking about.
Bergeron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for presenting. How does this fit in with the conversation that's ongoing right now currently about rethinking I-94?
Great question. I can start that. I don't know if I want to venture another answer on that, but I think that we are acknowledging that the world didn't stop and let us do this study, that life keeps going, and there's some very, very active conversations. I think that we're going to have the right agency people in the room that are familiar with it and acknowledge that we can talk about it. The findings in this are not going to be immediate. There's going to be time for that, but I think we're going to be very aware and very sensitive to the fact that these are very ongoing narratives, and we're certainly going to end up talking about these projects. One thing I didn't emphasize is that in this scope is we're going to have 8 pilot corridors that are chosen to be representative of the different parts across the region. It may or may not be that one. I'm not saying that's going to be picked, but we're going to be trying to choose ones that help tell the story of specifically what happens along a project corridor, gets into more detail than the broad region, and can sort of help inform those conversations, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
May I just provide some feedback on this too about just it's important about who we are centering about like the harm done to, because I've been a part of some of the Rethinking I-94 conversations where people are like, well, it's a commerce, like you're going to harm businesses if you do this or X, Y, and Z. So I think it's just really important for us to center the people who are directly impacted by this, who live there, and also using that public health perspective about it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think Member Zhang asked a really interesting question, and that would be, at least what I'm looking at it, how does this study that you've talked about on slide 6 and the project schedule interface with the work that MnDOT is doing around reimagining 94? Because it seems to me that it's how it gets reimagined is critical to how the potential harms could fall, and that they're really inextricably linked, really. So how, what's the schedule for MnDOT? Do you know?
You want a status update on that project?
Well, I don't know if we need a status update, but I think we need to make sure that they get coordinated.
Okay, well, yeah. What we have is we haven't started an EIS process, but that's the goal, to start an EIS process on that, which means environmental impact statement. Right now where we are, we had basically 10 options. And obviously previous commissioner has apologized for what's done in the past, and all our efforts are to mitigate and look at what we can do for the local community. And while we do that, we have a responsibility to take care of regional traffic and regional freight and all kinds of downtown Minneapolis businesses, downtown council, the hospital, the sports teams, and all of that. They speak up too. So we have a role as a Department of Transportation to take care of all aspects. How we do that, that's a difficult thing. As you may know, we have proposed to go from 10 options down to 3 and 4. 4 basically. One of them is a no build, just leave it as is, and then the other 3 options are proposed to basically not to expand and also not to advance a proposed at grade that has been talked about, because that just does not work for many, many reasons. And we can get into that if you'd like. But so that's the schedule for that is we're over this year we're taking the options that we have. We're proposing to finalize a scoping study basically and finalize it, get approval from different agencies, cooperating agencies, participating agencies, these are federal agencies as well as local. And by the end of the year, early next year, it'll be finalized that those are the options that will be put forward to advance into an EIS, and then using engineering and all the regular process, that it's a federal process that's used to advance, get down to one vision, and which would be the ideal vision would be, in my book, I don't think you can take care of everybody 100%. If everybody gets 75, 80% of what their needs are, I think that's a success. And then, by the way, we don't have a dollar to do anything on that project, so once you have a vision determined, you can start developing program of projects. It's way too big to do one thing at one time for that stretch of the road. And one thing to remind folks, that's a 7 to 8 mile road that we're talking about, rethinking. It ends, the western end stops before it gets into the commons area. The eastern side ends before you get into the, I don't know what we call it, Spaghetti Junction, whatever, in St. Paul. So you can do a good job for that, help with the community, north-south movements and transportation. However, ultimately, it's an incomplete system because what are you going to do at the end still? So we talked about it earlier, that you still got to figure out what you're going to do on the west side, the commons area, 35 and 94, and the tunnel, and then on the east side in the St. Paul area. So there's much to be done. So I hope I don't know if I answered your question or not, but I do have a question of the speaker. What specifically will be the deliverable, and what will we use it for? How will we use it? How will we I don't know if anybody from MnDOT is involved with this. Molly, are you? Okay. How will that help us make decisions? Because as an engineer, I'm hoping I'm creating some, when we're designing, we think through projects that you create some benefit and do some good things as well. We're not building things to harm people, at least not intentionally.
You may be way ahead of us on this idea, but you probably are. But yeah, I think that's a good question.
It is a good question. Just to circle back on, with this process, we're certainly going to be drawing information from studies, and there's been already so much work and thought in some of these corridors. That is a resource for this too. That's input to us regardless of the corridor. Human toll, that was on our radar for 35W, Rethink for 94. There's work along Trunk Highway 55. There's multiple studies. We will glean information from that. That will be part of this effort. I pull up these objectives because this goes to the types of deliverables we're going to get to. One is just an organizational structure for helping think through these and talk through these, but we have a couple different elements. One is going to be more public focused and one is more agency focused. The second to last bullet, data and findings as an interactive public tool. One of the things we're going to do is try to visualize some of these impacts and some of the realities across the region and share that on an interactive timeline, interactive mapping. We've already started the work of collecting that information, even though it's going to be a couple of years out before it's done, because we want to think through how to share this strategically. We're not just going to throw a lot of stuff on the website and say it's good. It has to be meaningful. There's some really good examples and some resources on the examples of what's been done in other projects. We want to make sure that we're bringing the public along and they're understanding what this is about and what this is, talking about the positives and the negatives. More to the agency, more to the what can MnDOT or what can other agencies do. And again, I'm sure MnDOT has many reps on different committees. I'm sure we can talk about that offline. But the idea is a toolbox of mitigations and guidance for implementation. What we talked about during the earlier stages, there's many different levels of intervention. There's decisions your cities are making with their public works department and their council. There's what is MnDOT's regional program. There's Met Council on the policy side. There's Metro Transit on the transit line side. And then there's a lot of things that aren't really on the corridor, but especially when we talk about human impacts and human toll, what are other agency partners? So the number of potential implementing agencies is very vast. What we want to build out is how does this intersect with your decision-making process? How does this intersect with what you're already doing? I don't know, Bethany, if you want to talk about the regional solicitation process being one touch point, but there's many different ways. I think that that's going to be an important conversation also we're having with agency partners is what would you find useful? We don't need to just put something out there that's like an obvious statement, but, oh, you're right here. You're in my blind spot. But we also want to make sure that it's relevant and it aligns to the decision-making processes. I don't know if you want to.
Thanks, Ms. Brand Sergeant.
Yes, thank you. And then one of the potential funding mechanisms for these mitigations has been considered through the regional solicitation evaluation, and we would not be ready for a 2026 solicitation, but with the completion of this study, we would be able to make recommendations to TAB to consider either new funding programs or project types for consideration.
Right. Very good. Thank you. All right. Any other questions? Oh, yes, Jean, go ahead.
One
Member
of
Jean.
the, I mean, I would be curious how this kind of rolls out and for how the agencies, different agencies would adopt it, or how this would affect future programs that we decide here too, because I'll give you an example. Right now I have Highway 61 that goes right through my, it's a commercial corridor. And basically, they were told, businesses were told that the project wouldn't come down to their area until fall this year. Well, the contractor said that they can move up the project, and so they started this already. And so businesses were really upset about it. So businesses, we're trying to convene about how to get business mitigation funds. And since this is a state program, a state project, they're trying to go at the state for this. But then we're hearing from legislators who say, we don't want to do this piecemeal, right? We don't want to do it just for this project. And then in addition to that, then the local city, like the city, St. Paul County, were like, this isn't our project. It's not within our scope, or we haven't budgeted for any mitigation funds for this. So I would say like that's a harm that we should also consider too, about the disruption that it has, and that providing some guidance on that about mitigation to impacted to like both not just the businesses, but also in the case of where one of the speakers, where you mentioned about having to buy air purifiers for the homes, like those are harms done. So just those are some examples that I would definitely like to see being considered and presented and discussed with the different agencies.
Absolutely.
Very good. Member Jose.
Oh, I don't think I had a question.
Okay, I thought I saw your hand up. Yes. John, go ahead.
Great job, Isla and team. I'm glad you brought up Highway 55. Born and raised in North Minneapolis, I was going to bring up 55 and 94. I know Rondo, the neighborhood is front and center, but I think those two are very important aspects of this project as well.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Thanks for being with us. We'll look forward to updates.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we've got a safety plan presentation. We've got Kevin Peterson and Maddie Dahlheimer from Washington County with us today. And Commissioner Karwoski, I didn't know if you had any opening remarks you wanted to make, but certainly you're welcome to before they make their presentation, if you so desire.
What Kevin's going to describe our projects in my district, I think if it's okay, Mr. Chair, I'd like to just make some closing comments.
Very good.
Gaps. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Peterson, welcome.
Chair, members of the board, good afternoon, and thank you for having us today. TAB has asked for more information on safety. And as I understand it, most of the presentations that have come before the board have been more general safety study related. Engineer warning, we're gonna get in the weeds today. We're gonna have some fun. So Washington County wanted to bring a real world situation on how we are planning for and delivering safety improvements. We will be reviewing a single location on a single project to illustrate how funding impacts that delivery of safety enhancements. Of course, metrics are critical to the work that we do, both prioritizing and measuring success. But to truly deliver a project, in our opinion, requires boots on the ground listening and reacting to the users, the public, and partner agencies. There are really two things that we'd like you all to know when my 10 minutes are up here. Number one, safety is our top priority with everything that we do at Washington County, no matter how projects are funded. And then secondly, successful project delivery requires flexibility. We will not bend on our mission, and like I said, safety is on the forefront, but we truly do not know what these projects will be until we've done meaningful engagement and listening. So out of the gate here, my name is Kevin Peterson. I serve as the Washington County Design Engineer. My role there is to support the project managers, planners, designers, communicators, right-of-way acquirers, contract writers, plan developers, and really constructors of county highway improvement projects. That team really takes a one page with a few lines and a budget in our capital improvement plan and develops that into a construction project. This is a multi-year process on every project we do. Before we dive into the intersection we want to highlight today, I want to thank this board for the funding that was provided to complete a trail segment in the city of Grant. That project has been awarded to a contractor and we built this summer. You'll see that on the screen here. Without the funding that we received through this board, that project would not have gotten done. So thank you. Here you'll see a few more details on the Safe Routes to School trail that was funded through regional solicitation. Ultimately, looking ahead to the east, we're hoping to connect this trail into the Gateway Regional Trail. So while this is a small component of a larger vision. So on to the matter at hand. Zooming out, you'll see in red here the location of that Safe Routes to School funded trail. You'll see it's north of Highway 36 and 694 on our County Highway 12. Jumping ahead a slide here, about a mile and a half to the west is the project we're going to be highlighting today. It's worth noting that as you go further west of this project is the Bruce Vento Regional Trail. And of course, east of these projects is the Gateway State Trail. So this county highway really serves as a connector between those two trails, but also just a busy vehicle corridor to east and west. So the project consisted of improvements to County Highway 12, which is formerly MnDOT's Trunk Highway 244, from Century Avenue, which is the west Washington County line, to Stillwater Boulevard near downtown Matamita in Willarney. This 1.3 mile project was part of a multi-phase effort to update this road once the county took it over from MnDOT. If you look at the list of scope items here, you may not think this is a real safety project, right? This looks like the county maintaining their infrastructure. But as I noted, every part of what we do, safety is front and center of all that effort. So when we took over this road, we knew the pavement was in very poor condition. There was a need to improve sidewalk and trail infrastructure. We knew turn lanes were needed for safety at several intersections. We knew a large culvert needed to be replaced. But what we also knew was that from a traffic volume standpoint, none of the intersections here warranted a traffic signal or a stoplight. Here you'll see crash data for the corridor prior to beginning our project. We talk a lot about high injury and fatal crashes, as we should. Those projects and those crashes typically score higher when submitting for funding. What you'll see here is we had none of those crashes on this corridor, which is a good thing. On the surface, that would tell us that this is not a safety project that we were doing. But diving into the specifics on the Wedgwood intersection, which you'll see highlighted in green here, we learned from the public that there was a major funnel point to bike and ped destinations north, south, east, and west of this intersection. Parents shared that they were not comfortable allowing their kids to cross the street to use the park. This is despite crosswalk markings and enhanced signage. Rapid rectangular flashing beacons, pedestrian bump outs, enhanced crosswalks, and pedestrian-activated hybrid flashers were analyzed as part of this project. Not one of those options, when used alone and combined with other alternatives, made us comfortable. For example, we are already using enhanced crosswalk markings and signage. Bump outs would not accommodate the on-road bicyclists. With 12,000 vehicles per day, a rapid rectangular flashing beacon simply wouldn't be adequate. The flashing yellow lights do not require drivers to legally stop. They're simply a warning. The presence of turn lanes could also allow a vehicle to pull around a vehicle that happened to stop for those pedestrians, and they may not actually see those pedestrians as they did that. Let's see, where am I here? The presence of turn lanes, yeah, could allow you to do that. And there are two other legs to this traffic, or to this intersection, that would not be able to see that rapid rectangular flashing beacon. So without fixing this safety concern here at this intersection, we did not have support for this project. Ultimately, Joe Gustafson, the county's traffic engineer, suggested an unwarranted traffic signal at this intersection. The Minnesota Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, which is the traffic engineer's Bible, flat out says a traffic control signal should not be installed unless one or more of the factors described in this chapter are met. We did not meet one of those factors. Here you'll see a picture of that final traffic signal installed here. The final project included striped and marked crossings at every leg and the installation of this signal. The original project was not scoped for this. This project drastically improved the neighborhood's ability to get to key destinations like parks, schools, and shopping by biking and walking. This project would not have competed for regional solicitation, roadway reconstruction, or spot mobility funds. The crash volumes were simply not high enough. Even if we had been awarded the funds, we would never have included a traffic signal when we applied because those applications are based on a desktop level understanding of a project. We are applying multiple years before the preliminary design and engagement takes place. Therefore, specific project elements are not included. Finally, I pulled crash data on this intersection this morning and I'm happy to report that there have been 0 reported crashes since the signal was installed in 2022. In conclusion, we do not envy your position distributing funds and understand the importance of metrics, especially when reviewing opportunities region-wide. What we want you to leave here understanding is that safety is the highest priority for staff and the projects we deliver. We are all in this together. Thank you for your time again. And with that, I understand Commissioner Kowalski has a few things to add.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. Yep. Commissioner, go ahead.
Kevin, for the presentation. You know, I just wanted to add that, just to maybe enhance what our engineer, Kevin Peterson, had to say about the project is, you know, I think our county and probably your own counties and cities, we really, I think, almost take the attitude that it's the community's road, even though it's a county's road. So that section that Kevin described there really divided 2 large residential areas. So this road really became a much more of a connector between those large neighborhoods. I think, I don't know if you'd mentioned the Center Islands was a safety retreat area. We had a lot of community meetings. This also, the design of this happened during COVID, and I think we all learned a lot about COVID. We got a lot, thousands of input, online inputs that people to 3 different community meetings. And we have a standard rule of using at least 3 community meetings on these large investments. There were a lot of partnerships. In the Matamita area, there's a Lake Links Trail that goes around White Bear Lake. This kind of played a role in that trail, had too. Big biking community, and we heard a lot from them. So I think it's better to embrace them. They didn't get everything they wanted because there was a section just beyond this that we really wanted to partner with the city of Matamita on a very nice city trail, and we would avoid them not biking in what a county road may not be the best solution to a city option for a biking path. So in good conscience, we didn't enhance. You can never stop a biker from being on a shoulder of a road, and that's not the issue. It's just that you really like to have our trails compatible with the city trail system. Let's see, I'll just, and then lastly, part of this was actually 3 other segments, but we used churros in an area to enhance biking. The partners, besides the school, were multiple cities and the Links Link Bike organization. So anyhow, I think the key is to really embrace the community. And as Kevin pointed out, that stoplight didn't make a sense. But if the community feels the road's safe, they're gonna believe in how to use it. They're gonna use the crosswalk properly. So I think it really makes a difference to go the extra mile and make the community feel like it's their road and that they get the safety elements, if at all possible. We never wanna give the falsehood of safety though. So that's the bottom line. And we gotta compliment our engineering department. They do a great job, so. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Have you gotten good community feedback since the project's been completed?
Yeah, I think real good. And this biking community will let you know if it's not working out. They're great people.
Yeah, we're gonna send Member Martinson up there to check it out and see how safe it is. All right. Question, yes. Member Joseph.
Thank you, Chair. I actually, to kind of add to what you were just talking about, I had a question about because you did say that what transportation engineers use, the document, I can't remember which one you said it was, that's not the type of engineer that I am, but that this intersection did not meet any of the requirements for a traffic signal. However, you did decide to put the traffic signal in, and I'm hearing that was more around, what the community wanted, and safety, and, in St. Paul, I get people emailing me every day asking me to put in a traffic signal or a stop sign or something. Could you just say more about how you arrived at that decision as an engineer?
Yeah, Chair, member, thank you for the question. The signal warrants, that's what I'm referencing. That's really largely based on traffic volume. There is a pedestrian volume component to it. But like I said, we didn't meet any of those. The way we looked at it was we knew that County Highway 12 was a barrier getting across. And I kind of highlighted some typical options that are used when there is a barrier, that rapid rectangular flashing beacon, a flashing light above. But when we put those on paper, they just didn't really serve the area. So, like I said, we kind of just took the risk to add that unwarranted signal just to really help those pedestrians cross. Another option to close that barrier would have been an all-way stop. But given the 12,000 through vehicles and relatively light side street volume, that would have required, the biggest movement to stop every time going through there, which would have led to rear-end crashes, emissions issues, things like that. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's kind of how we looked at it.
I think maybe just add one more, because I think what I've heard from traffic engineers is sometimes when you add something like a stop sign, for example, you might think that it will make this intersection safer, but it doesn't actually make it safer. But it sounds like you arrived at this decision too. I mean, with the understanding it would ultimately make the intersection safer.
Correct. Yeah, that's part of that warrant analysis. When you install a stoplight traffic signal, crashes typically go up. It's those rear-end type crashes. And to your point, we get asked for new stoplights every day too. And we have to say no almost all the time because they just don't meet the need like this one did.
Okay, thanks.
All right, other questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
I want to make a comment because, first of all, I want to thank Washington County for taking on this project because around Hennepin County, we have a lot of intersections like that too with our county roads that don't meet qualifications for upgrades that a lot of us commissioners think should happen in certain places. And it's a lot around access to places, schools, our parks, and places like this, but our roadways are going way too fast, even though they're posted much lower. We see speeds much higher, those kinds of things. And so it's extremely dangerous or hard to get across, and there are a lot of near misses and everything. And I think this is a different way to look at a project like that. It's a different way to analyze it. And if we want to get to zero, theoretical zero, we need to be in the prevention mode and stopping it before we wait till somebody gets hit. And so I really think that this has some insight for us as counties, and I hope our staff and the counties are looking at Washington County's work to see what it really means to the future of how we look at these and how we're really going to get to zero.
Good. Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Appreciate it. Thanks for your comments, Commissioner. All right, we've got a couple more matters in front of us this afternoon. We're going to get a quick ABRT update, plan update from Katie Roth and Kyle Burrows. Kyle, I see Kyle coming up.
Good afternoon, committee members, Mr. Chair. My name is Kyle O'Donnell Burrows. I'm here today to give us a short update on the arterial BRT plan update we're working on. You'll recall that we were here back in January with an update that has a little bit more information about the scope of this work. This is to provide a little bit of a progress update and talk to you about the candidate corridors we've identified as well as the draft screening and evaluation criteria. First, we'll do a quick process recap just to kind of level set where we all are. Then we'll get into those candidate corridors and a little bit on how we came to them and talk through a little bit of that draft screening and evaluation criteria, as I mentioned, before getting into some next steps. Level setting us here just to remind us on what our planned outcome is. Our goal here is to identify the next programmed arterial BRT lines. These would be implemented between 2030 and 2035. So these would be the next lettered lines, the J, K, and L lines. We have some additional goals here attached to identifying candidate corridors that would be good to consider between 2050, aligning with the updated transportation policy plan. And our goal here is to complete this work by December of this year to feed into the 2026 regional solicitation application process for the corridor that would be identified ultimately as the J line. Level setting us a little bit about where arterial BRT lands within Metro Transit's set of tools that we have available to us within our local bus network. So we have tools, a variety of types of tools that align sort of on a more coverage side, coverage purpose. So these are tools where we're really trying to maximize the specific land area that is covered by some type of transit service. The best example of these are the more demand responsive style services that we have, Metro Micro or some of the other kind of area-based on-demand style services. And then we also have tools that kind of align along a spectrum of, towards the ridership end of the spectrum here, where our goal for this particular tool is to generate as many riders, serve as many people as we possibly can, reduce VMT as much as we possibly can. And that's where arterial BRT falls on that end of the spectrum. Characteristics of this type of service tend to be straighter lines, not turning off onto different destinations, and really keeping that simple, and then having high frequency and kind of long spans of service. The 2050 Transportation Policy Plan really reflects those different types of purposes in the guidance provided to Metro Transit and the suburban providers, where the arterial BRT mode in the TPP is anticipated, is guided to generate 25 or more passengers per in-service hour. So more benefit, more riders generated per each hour of service that we're putting out there. That expectation is the highest among any of the local bus tools that we have available to us. And consequently, the TPP guides us to use these tools in sort of the areas where we have highest anticipated transit ridership. So transit market areas 1 and 2 typically. And again, these are guidance, not strict rules, but they really help us understand the work that we're doing. Level setting here, we have 4 goals with our arterial BRT plan updates. I'll go through those very quickly here. We want to be building on success to grow ridership by investing in arterial BRT where people use transit the most. We want to be advancing equity and reducing regional disparities in access to opportunities. We want to be balancing the expanded arterial BRT investment that we're proposing with the resources available to us. And we want to be grow a network that connects transit-supportive land uses and supports all-day, all-purpose travel. And those goals will help us guide the evaluation and screening criteria that we'll be using, as well as helped us identify those candidate corridors. Folks have seen this slide before. We are taking a 4-step process to get to complete this work, where we're really starting with that wide set of 17 candidate corridors that we've identified and we'll be talking through a little bit here today, narrowing down ultimately throughout a series of screening and evaluation and prioritization steps to identify 3 corridors that would be identified as the J, K, and L lines. And I'll talk a little bit more about those screening and evaluation steps here in a moment as well. So our first step, identify those candidate corridors. We've identified 17 candidate corridors for consideration for arterial bus rapid transit. These key inputs have been sort of already existing priorities identified in the 2040 Transportation Policy Plan. High frequency service either existing or planned through our Network Now planning process that was recently completed. Other high ridership corridors, conversations with our city and county partners, and Metropolitan Council priorities for consideration here as well. This map is just on the backdrop of our transit market areas. So you're all familiar with these, but the darker blue is the sort of higher anticipated transit ridership. This is that same map, just kind of labeling those candidate corridors and kind of cleaning up that background a little bit. I won't go through each line individually here. I will note that there is an interactive map on our project website, which I'll link to at the end of the slides here, that really allows folks to kind of dig around and kind of zoom in on the specific details of the corridors identified here as well. Getting into the screening and evaluation steps
Mr.
here.
Chair?
Yes, Commissioner.
So when this has been done in the past, I mean, there's nothing in Dakota County, the G line's gonna come down into West St. Paul and, you know, is in the mix, if you will. And you have the blackout areas of the, we're back to the map issue, sorta. But the darker areas are your suburban transit providers, I believe, is that correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, council members, that's correct.
And were they exempt from consideration in this round?
Mr. Chair, committee members, this is a Metro Transit-led study for Metro Transit's arterial BRT system, and so those, we are focusing on Metro Transit service area. Other suburban providers, you know, certainly some of them are studying this style of service in other areas, but we don't do sort of the planning or study in the suburban providers areas. Yeah.
So if I might, the last time we went through this process to identify GH and K or whatever letter we're up to, County Road 42 was in the mix. And so I am very concerned when I hear that you just like abandon. It should be the entire region should compete equally for evaluation, and in my mind, there shouldn't be the suburban doing their. So who made the decision? Because the last round, 42 was in the list. It wasn't in the least viable. It didn't, of course, rise to the top either. But it had a fighting chance, okay, in where it was landing in some of the evaluation metrics. And to see it not even be here, given the rapid growth in Dakota County, Rosemont's adding multifamily a lot in that area. 42 goes all the way into Scott County. You'd have the opportunity to have one thing that we very frequently talk about is suburban to suburban connection. Again, most of this looks radial in nature, centered around the core. So I'm concerned, and I don't know if it's too late to throw that one in here, but it's a missed opportunity, at least in my book.
Hey, Commissioner, let's chat about that for a moment. I'll go first to Commissioner Karwoski.
Yeah, I was gonna wait, but I think it piggybacks off of Member Holberg's point. In Washington County, we were of the understanding that this list has already been presented to the Met Council. And we really thought you haven't reached out to the communities for proper engagement to consider others. Now, I'm not discounting, I think, the ones you have on there. I'm not saying take any of those away. But the example is the purple line, and I know I've got my colleague from Ramsey County here, the purple line from the Maplewood area, whether it's Maplewood Mall, but it's been a very serious contender, did not even see it on here, out to Century College, which just touches into White Bear Lake. You know, 10% of the students at Century College drop out because they don't have transportation. We just feel our community wasn't engaged, the proper people weren't talked to, and then you went to the Met Council to approve this list. My question is, can we add a route or two, as Commissioner Holberg mentioned, or the purple line, as I mentioned? I know Ramsey County is very supportive of this point I'm making too.
Mr. Chair, if I may, so to address a couple of those pieces, County Road 42 was not studied as part of Metro Transit's study back in 2020 and 2021. It is being, or it has been studied for arterial BRT, led by I believe, MBTA in coordination with MTS and other folks, but that was not part of the initial set of candidate corridors that Metro Transit looked at back in 2020 and 2021. It is a regional corridor that's being considered as well. To the point about the Purple Line and the sort of soon-to-be Route 58 and that local corridor that would serve Century College and White Bear Avenue. That is certainly a corridor that we understand is a strong interest. Metro Transit did receive, had conversations with Ramsey County, did receive the request to include both the White Bear Avenue corridor, the kind of current Purple Line, as well as the West 7th corridor in this work. Metro Transit did not include both of those, not because that they wouldn't be good candidate corridors for arterial BRT, but because those corridors are both having sort of active way transit way planning in them right now. So in the Purple Line case, obviously that's there are ongoing conversations happening sort of right now with the Purple Line in that corridor and all of the stakeholders included in that corridor. With the West 7th corridor and the former Riverview corridor, obviously there are those conversations happening in public as well. We felt we would, by including those lines in this map here, sort of muddy the waters in public and sort of introduce parallel study processes, and did not want to do that and sort of interfere with any of the work that is happening in those two corridors. We did have conversations with Ramsey County staff about that approach and didn't receive any negative feedback about that approach, and that there was some understanding there about how that approach was going to be taken. That said, nothing that's on this map right now precludes outcomes from those conversations in terms of what are the planning outcomes there in those candidate corridors in those corridors.
Member Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there a reason that it's only 3 that there's JKL are being focused on and we can't do more?
Mr. Chair, committee members, 3 in 5 years is sort of the what we've kind of landed on is like the sort of sustainable delivery cadence on our program. Both within Metro Transit and then in coordination with our local roadway partners that we collaborate with very closely on the delivery of these projects. We are currently have identified H-line, which is out through 2030 right now. And so we're looking at that next 5-year chunk. That sort of 3 within 5 years is the approach we've been taking.
Go ahead.
I appreciate that, and I understand the sustainability and like what is feasible, and it seems like there's a lot of energy to really build this out much quicker, just from everywhere. And I don't know what mechanisms have to be put in place to say instead of 3 or 5, we're just going to do 7 or 8. In 5 years, because we have decided to prioritize transit and safety and moving people out of their cars into a transit system that covers the entire county, like 7-county metro area, not metro area, the 7-county regional area. Like, this is one of those ways that we could address a lot of the things that we've already talked about in this meeting, beyond just transit, but safety, climate, everything. So
I appreciate that.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner.
Could you just clarify again for me what study had the whole region with the low, medium, high that included 42? I mean, these are the letters, not the colors. Because now I'm confused to say that you never, I mean, there was a document that.
There was, I remember.
I might ask if an
Mr. Chair, members, Katie Roth, Director, Arterial BRT at Metro Transit. To your question about County Road 42, I think we're looking around to some of our MTS colleagues to help us identify a more global study that might be responsive to the question you are raising.
Here, you got another phone, a friend.
Thank you, Mr.
I mean, if nobody knows for sure, get back to me and don't waste the committee's time. But
many years
I
ago.
kind of got a lockbox mind, and I can picture the graphic with the different colors and the different categories and where it stood, and it was the whole region for letters, not colors.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, circa 2008, we did a transit master study that included a number of different corridors around the region. Since then, those have really evolved into different projects and studies. MBTA did study it independently, that corridor. They may be still wrapping up that study. The council has included those projects as potential transit ways that could be added to the 2050 Transportation Policy Plan. It describes those, but they're not identified with a mode, alignment, and funding path that are in the plan. They're just described as potential transit ways, including County Road 42 and others.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't want to waste more time on it.
All right, Member Cashman.
Oh, thank you, Chair Hovland. So are you considering in this map the new light rail extensions and stations and the connectivity to those stations? Because I have, the Green Line extension going through my area, Western Minneapolis, and the Blue Line extension that is on its way going north, and I'm just trying to understand how you're projecting for the increased ridership to those areas and how to get there.
Mr. Chair, committee members, yes, the existing and planned metro network certainly was considered in terms of how we are identifying and defining these corridors. Transfer points to the metro network are key drivers for where a particular station ultimately might end up being located. And so those are pieces that are certainly a part of this work.
Okay, thanks. I'll just highlight that. Well, sometimes we notice that you can't connect. If you're on the Blue Line, you have to go all the way downtown to get on the Green Line, for example. So in South Minneapolis, maybe creating those networks between the Green and Blue Line that you don't have to go all the way and then all the way back on another line. And I see this number 10, the Franklin. I think the western edge would be at the Green Line station, and then the going east down Franklin, you would then connect to the Blue Line. So I'll just give my plug for that so that people can easily transfer between light rail.
Sure.
Others? Yeah, what I heard is kind of the underlying, if you went back 2 slides, slide 6, who's identifying, who's screening, who's evaluating, who's prioritizing, where does the input come at the front end? And then the distillation process, who has a voice in that as well? So.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, so this is a Metro Transit-led study. Metro Transit had conversations with several of our core regional partners and county partners on inputs into which candidate corridors should be a part of this, as well as building on the work that Metro Transit just completed with Network Now, which is our sort of our plan out through 2027 to add and expand on the local and express bus network. So that is kind of, this is a continuation and a building on of that, where we're saying, here's where we think, the local network needs to be. This is the next logical step off of that.
Okay. So I'm going to let you wrap up. We're going to try to get out of here at 2:30. Steve Peterson has told us he can wait until May for the regional solicitation update. So why don't you finish your presentation, and then we'll see if we have more questions, and then we'll make sure the group gets out of here on time.
Great.
Thank you.
Appreciate that, Mr. Chair. Let's see. So moving on from...
I'll come back to you, Member Barber, after he finishes his presentation.
I just actually want to comment on this particular map, because we get a lot of questions on that, and I've gotten some emails on this. None of this is finished. It hasn't come to council. We've had an information presentation come to us at this point in time. I've been getting emails of, why is my program or project ranked 13th? Nothing is ranked in this thing. I asked actually for them to put numbers and the names of the corridors because it helps me know where everything is. So when
Letters.
you're out communicating with people, we wanted to be able to say, kind of like be able to say, this is Broadway or this is this street or whatever. So just to be really clear, this is something we're bringing here as information. It was information at the council. It will be coming through. We'll continue to be talking about it in the future.
Thank you, Member Barber. All right, Mr. Burrow, go ahead.
Great. So following that initial step of identifying those candidate corridors, we will continue to move through the screening and then evaluation process where we're first narrowing down to a smaller set of candidate corridors, the most promising corridors based on those screening criteria, looking at about 8 to 10 of those is sort of our anticipated outcome. And then the evaluation of those corridors really based on a more detailed arterial BRT concept within that particular corridor, where we're looking at station locations, a potentially refined alignment, any changes that might be needed to the local bus network, and really getting to a ranking of those sort of 1 through 8 or 1 through 10 based on those technical evaluation criteria. We have some draft screening criteria here to just kind of highlight here for folks today. And again, those are based on those 4 goals. So on that first on build on success, we're really looking at the current ridership and productivity of the underlying local routes here in that area. For advancing equity and reducing regional disparities, here we're looking at historically disadvantaged populations both living and kind of traveling within a corridor as well as using transit on the corridor. So getting both that spatial component of the demographics as well as people who are using transit in the corridor. We want to be balancing our expanded arterial BRT investment with the resources that are available to us. So here really looking at the gap between the planned midday frequency on the local bus route and what that planned arterial BRT frequency would be going forward. And then finally, growing a network that connects transit-supportive land uses. Here, we're really looking at the population and job density. We know population and job density are strong drivers for demand for transit. Also looking at the diversity of trip purposes on a particular corridor. So how is transit being used? And we want to make sure that we are serving a lot of different types of trips, not just that sort of 9-to-5 style commute trip. So the more diverse transit that is happening in a corridor, the higher the score there. And then land uses. We know that existing conditions are not the only thing that is important here. So looking out at future allowable land uses in the screening criteria as well. Our draft evaluation criteria, so similar themes built on those goals that we have available, those goals that we've developed. But here we're able to dig in a little bit more detail when we have a more developed set of advanced corridors. We'll be able to look at future ridership, not just kind of existing ridership, so doing ridership analysis on these corridors, ridership projections, and then looking at specifically the implications of specific station locations, concept station locations, for disadvantaged populations, for limited mobility boardings, to make sure that we're reducing the distance that people who have mobility challenges have to go to get to transit. And then access to destinations. So how far can you get, how many things can you get to within 30 minutes by transit, both for historically disadvantaged populations as well as for the general population. And then finally, looking at that more detailed capital and operating costs to help us get to that balancing the investment with our resources. We anticipate completing this project by the end of this year. There are approximately 4 quarters or 4 tasks here in front of us, aligning with the 4 quarters here. So beginning later this quarter in May and June, we'll be beginning that screening step. And then getting into that more detailed evaluation step in the 3rd quarter. And then prioritization, where we're having really detailed conversations with our project partners about planned and programmed roadway projects so that we can be sure that we are aligning with those, making sure that we are not coming back a year later and kind of doing another construction project on a roadway, trying to minimize that impact to the public so that we can align the JK and L line with those corridors. And anticipate bringing this to the council for consideration for adoption in December, January timeframe. Finally, just a quick hit on some of the planned outreach and engagement ahead of us. Right now, we are really driving folks to that online interactive map. We're out kind of reaching out through our networks right now, connecting with neighborhood and community organizations, rider engagement, to get folks to be commenting on that set of initial candidate corridors that we have through that interactive map. We'll be seeking feedback on each of the outcomes of those screening and evaluation steps as we get to the conclusion of those phases of the project, and then sharing those results of the prioritization in the fourth quarter of this year. We have some additional kind of technical open houses for city and county staff. So city and county staff throughout the region have been invited to those, as well as one-on-one conversations that we've been having with some of our core partners. And then that April 25th timeframe is when we're completing the comment period on that on those set of candidate corridors. So that's upcoming here as well. With that, I'll stand for any additional questions.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Burrows. Thanks for that good presentation. Questions for Mr. Burrows? Any supplemental? Yes, Member Johnson.
Thank you, Chair Hovland. Thank you for the presentation. I think I've watched at least a couple times of seeing bits of this before. I think my biggest question maybe gets to what Member Foster was asking about, is sort of when you talk about sustainability, is that about being able to actually operate the lines when they're constructed? Is that about the financing to actually build them in the first place? You know, we're one of the main contributors to the regional solicitation for the funding. And maybe if you have a second part of that, what are the main funding sources? I know the state's kicked in. How does the new county sales tax dollars coming towards them potentially play into this? Sorry, it's a mess of questions, but it's a lot about the financing.
Mr. Chair, committee members, I think to answer your first question, that metric is about making sure that we're able to deliver the lines that we're sort of promising that we're able to deliver, both on the capital side of things and also on the operating side of things. So, we have capital funding is an important part of this. Operating is also a crucial part of it that we can't lose sight of, both from an operator's standpoint and from an actual dollar amount standpoint. And it's operators and it's mechanics, and there's this chain of staff that we need to help support these lines. To your second point, that we're funded through a variety of capital sources, right? So there's state funding attached to it. Obviously, TAB is a very important funder for this program and really a key driver in delivering this program. We do pursue on some lines other federal funding sources as well as state bonding and some other Met Council sources as well.
Okay, that definitely answers my question. I know we're not going to get the presentation today, but I know arterial BRT is listed as one of the categories, possibly in the revamp of the regional solicitation. And then my last thought, just to end on a highlight, I really like that my BRT stop was the first thing you had on that presentation. Just really cool to see. Like, that's where I get on my bus.
Great. How's it going so far?
It's really good. So thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Burrows.
Thank you.
Steve, you want to duck up here for 30 seconds? Steve Peterson? I just want you to kind of affirm all, the number of technical people you've got working on these special issue categories as they work on their part of the regional solicitation.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. So quick update. We've established 7 what we're calling special issue working groups of technical experts throughout the region. I think we've got over 100 people, and it might be interesting to look at those lists. They are attached to the agenda. There's a PDF. And so those are people who answered the call to volunteer for these groups, probably meeting on the order of 3 to 6 times over the course of the next 3 months, and hope to bring you some good information on what we learned from those experts.
All right, well, we know you'll keep them working, and we'll look forward to the presentation in a little bit more detail in May.
Yep, thanks.
Anybody in the TAB have anything for the good of the order? Anything from TAB members? Want to share? Yes, Member Jenkins.
So I was at a meeting yesterday And to go to Connie's comments earlier, this is Work Zone Awareness Week. So while you're navigating through all of the myriad of challenges facing us in the metro area, please be aware it's not just other vehicles to watch for, but it is those construction zones and the people who are working there to make our roads better.
Okay, good. And I think it's almost that time of the year where Member Schember takes off on some cross-country journey.
Well, we don't have firm plans, but it looks like New York, Vermont, and the Catskills this year, looping.
A flat ride.
A flat ride, yeah.
Yeah, I thought
It'll
you
be in
told
the
us
fall.
You're going to go from Maine to Florida or something.
No, not this year.
All right, all right. Anybody else? Thanks, folks, for your good attention today. It was a good meeting, very productive. All right, we'll see you in a month. Meeting adjourned.